This video is sponsored by Into the AM. More expensive equals more better. If you get more expensive kit to paint your miniatures with, you'll get better results, right? I'm finishing up airbrushing my first army. You can watch part 1 up there, which I used the Harder and Steenbeck Ultra for. I've got a few models to finish off, but this time I'm upgrading to the Evolution. The Evolution 2024 is about 40-50 quid more expensive than the Ultra, which already isn't a cheap brush. So what's in the box that makes it different? Probably a load of behind the scenes technical stuff that I just don't really understand, but the main differences, advertised on the front of the box and visually at least, are we've got 2 different size paint cups, and these screw in opposed to pushing in as I did on the Ultra. The needle is uncovered rather than it being encased and protected. The trigger is a bit more ergonomic and feels a bit nicer to rest one's finger on rather than placing it on top of the Ultra. And you can pull the trigger all the way back without having to press the trigger down and release paint. Gone is the collar as a way of limiting how far you can pull the trigger back, and that is replaced with this turny butt dial thing. More options for restricting. As opposed to the 6 or 7 options you have in the Ultra, this one gives you loads more. I'm not counting them. There's a lot. You also get 2 needles and nozzles, the 0.4mm and 0.2mm. So how is it in use? Well, let's get painting some models and try to find out. It's worth noting at this point that any adjustments I make will be solely based around my own experience. If you're at a similar sort of skill level to me, learning airbrushing, have been for, a few months, then that might be relevant to you. Or if you're new to airbrushing, I think this will be quite helpful. If you're a seasoned pro, you can just watch me make a ton of mistakes and call me an idiot. You are not wrong. First up, I'm painting a Brutalis Dreadnought. Base coated it all absolutely fine. This came installed with a 0.2mm needle and nozzle, so that's just what I'm trying out first. With base coating, I'm not sure more control and accuracy is really a relevant test, but hey, here we go. Looks-wise, even though I'm painting it in a Deathwing scheme, I was doom scrolling on TikTok and found a cool dread from this chap, Andy the Brushsmith. So I wanted to try and replicate sort of that placement of light and dark and that kind of thing. I'm using the same recipe as I did on my troops. Tamiya paints for the win. Lots of people have been telling me to get masks and things like that. I'd recorded this before I released part 1. I do own one now, but I don't in this video. So please know I'm opening all the windows and I'm ventilating the space as much as I can. But yes, best practice to wear a mask, as people keep telling me. Tamiya paints go on incredibly smooth, and I must say the trigger on this brush is brilliant. It's softer than the Ultra, really responsive and smooth. It's lovely. Putting on the base coats was nice, comfortable, one might say. Into the AM make the best graphic tees on the market. And the good news is some of their most loved designs are back in stock. These best-selling graphic tees, vintage tees, and button-ups are all back in stock on their website now. If you've been waiting ages to get this shirt, that I got a few years ago, you can now get it again. It's finally back. And if you use the link down in our description, you will get 10% off. Smashing. As well as these t-shirts that are coming back, you've got all of their other graphic tees, the basics range, jumpers and shorts. I recently picked up a pair of their trousers. They look all formal and fancy, but bam, so flexible, so comfortable. I used to be a jeans man, but now I am a changed man. I can be smart and comfortable all at the same time. It's insane. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. This ad is about the restock of the shirts, not the trousers, but definitely check them out. Link down in the description, 10% off. Then let's get back to airbrushing. Bye! I chickened out of putting like a red stripe on any of my troops because I was nervous about messing it up. So I thought I'd try and get a little fancy and put a single stripe down the shoulder. Taping it was a pain, but I got there eventually. Went on with the red and then with a darker and lighter shade to try and match the blend of the armor that I'd already done. Then, much to my dismay and sheer lack of skill, realised I'd oversprayed quite a bit. So I've just sprayed my red line on this guy and put my tape down, wanting to make it all as clean as possible. Even put some putty down to try and stop the overspray. I did such a bad job. The line itself looks pretty good. Like, it's not perfect, but I'm going to chip over it and that would look fine. The issue is on the sides, there's just all that airbrush overspray. I really wasn't careful enough. So I think probably what I'll do is I'll do three red stripes, because I think it'll be easier than fixing it with the base coats and all the mixing and all that sort of stuff. Do it, realise that it looks crap, and then probably put the base coats back on anyway. But we'll see what happens. Still some overspray to deal with, so swapping back to the base coats to try and cover it. It was at this point in the video that I'd realised I was still in my ultra mode of thinking and mixing the paint in the cup of the airbrush. The benefit of that exposed needle is you can pinch it and bubble back into the cup to put air back in and mix it all up really nicely. So started doing that. This made me realise that I really don't actually mind mixing up the paint in the airbrush cup, like just with the back of a brush or whatever. Seems to work really well. So I used to think not being able to bubble back was a really big deal breaker, but actually I don't care. Finished up my base coats, black to cages, gloss varnish all over, and then going in with an oil wash. I'm not really sure I'm getting any better with these, but washing the rivets was really satisfying and quite messy, so just making sure I spend as much time on the cleanup as possible. I did mix the wash a bit thicker this time. Some people did recommend that, so maybe that helped. Again, sponge shipping for the win. I'm borrowing heavily on Cult of Paint with their scheme, as some of you will already know. Henry seems to go darker with his chipping colours. I found myself generally going for two, like one dark and then one light. I actually used three here because the first brown that I went in with was a bit light and a bit red, so I went over it with a dark brown. And again, I love my reverse grip tweezers. These have been really good, and they're just so comfortable and easy to use. You don't have to hold them closed. They're just permanently closed. So someone months ago gave me that recommendation, so thank you very much. So that's the armour pretty much done. Opted for not using any transfers. I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but I'm sort of on the metallics now. I do quite like, the bright armour against the black. So instead of using gunmetal, which I've done for the rest of the army, I'm going to try exhaust manifold, which is kind of like a dark metal. But yeah, apart from the Team America shoulder, I think this looks pretty good. Like I'm quite chuffed. Yeah, I'm gonna leave the stripes in. It's funny. So there we go. All of my inadequacies can be laid bare. Metallics, shade, highlight, base, done. I did go back and use some transfers in the end. Glad I did. These were from the Mighty Brush, and thanks to Ross for lending me them. I can't give these ones back, obviously, but cheers. Next. More dreadnoughts, just shooty this time. Time to get reacquainted with masking tape. This army's split between Deathwing and Penitent Blades, so this one is one of them splitty boys. I've used pink as an undercut previously. I wanted to try something a little deeper this time. It was quite subtle on the troops, so I've gone with red. Whilst I put what felt like a billion coats on, I definitely made some errors. The twiddly butt dial. It doesn't hold your hand the same way as the collar on the Ultra does. It assumes you know more of what you're doing and gives you more options / freedom. For me, at my skill level, I think I prefer the collar on the Ultra. It's fast, it's simple, and it works. The butt dial is a bit more fiddly, a bit more testing, refining, but then you're in a world of slightly too much, not enough. You've got to be more connected with the airbrush. It is less beginner friendly, if that makes sense. Talking to a few people, they say they don't use the back at all, they just take it off. I've tried that here, and that's where some of those mistakes have come from. Overspray and flooding the model with paint. That's generally what's happened. And that's what I really liked about the Ultra, because it stopped me from doing that. Generally, the people that have raved about the Evolution to me are already accomplished airbrushers, so they don't need the same hand-holding that I do. So I tried going restriction-free, but I'm just not good enough. If you're good, Evolution good. If you're not good like me, then I think I still really, really like the Ultra. Flat white all over, and then it's time to retape and putty to get the contrast paint on. Combination of tape and putty worked great. Somebody recommended that in the previous video as well, so thank you very much to this person. Got a perfect line from the tape and the coverage from the putty. Imperial Fist yellow, it's always awesome. This is absolutely my favourite way to paint yellow, and I'm really, really happy with how the red turned orange and a bit deeper and a bit more sort of contrast in there, which is awesome. I've had some mixed results with my contrast paints, so I thinned down some Storm Fiend as I didn't want to obscure all of the work that I've painstakingly put into this. Turns out I did anyway. Yay! So I just left the tape on and went in with a light blue to highlight up the Storm Fiend. Done. I need to put more effort and also do more testing with contrast paints. I've really been enjoying speed paint at the moment, actually, because they just kind of work. There's definitely some contrast paints that I still really, really love. Imperial Fist Yellow, I think, is unmatched, but they are very, very consistent, the speed paints. Anywho, it is pretty much a repeat prescription from here on in, so here's a tiny montage and a spinny. Time of Dreadnoughts is over, and I'm moving on to the troops, and it is Belial time. So I'm just skipping to a point where all the basic is already done, because I painted up 15 Deathwing in part 1, and I don't think anybody wants to watch that again. I didn't really like my cloth on my Deathwing Knight, so I'm trying to figure out what to do, as this guy is mostly green cloth. I relied quite heavily on inspiration from the box art for this one. I did a 50-50 mix of dark green and black because I couldn't find my black green. I painted on a really shit highlight on the first go, so just painted over it and tried again. On the box art, the cloak is pretty dark, so I just went darker and just quite minimal, really. End result, I'm reasonably happy. It doesn't look amazing, but it doesn't look bad, and I think that's the best. That's the best thing. I just went with dark green on the cloth on the front of him, and I used a black wash from Pro Acryl just to darken it back down, but give it hopefully a different look to the cape. I did overdo it with a wash on the reverse side of the cape on the purple bit blotchy here and there, but just trying my best to sort of cover that up. And then after that, just sort of tapping in some highlights, a few sort of edge highlights, and then the brightest ones I tried to add a bit of weathering in and that kind of thing, just to cover up the fact that my brush control is not very good. And would you know it, I barely used an airbrush on this one. I airbrushed the armor, but he really doesn't have that much armor on display. I didn't want to mask everything up because I thought all these little dips and pockets and so on the model, I'd probably miss a bit or overspray somewhere or get something wrong, and then really, really struggle to fix it. So with this, I did just paint most of it by hand. I wanted to focus on camera on the cloth because that's what I wanted to work on from the last video. So I'm mainly using this Fancy Pants Supercar airbrush to spray my miniature in gloss varnish, which feels like a misappropriation. Could have done that with any airbrush. I'm not really using it to the best of its abilities here. And this isn't to say that I don't think you can airbrush models like this. Marco Frassoni does the Lion with an airbrush, and it's one of the most exceptional things that I've seen, and I'm just too scared to do it. So I don't think I need, again, I don't need that top end kit. I really don't. So we're moving on onto the Chaplain. I already have my airbrush out, so it's time to do the Deathwing shoulder pad first. And in true Patrick fashion, reactivated all the paint when I put the transfer on. Yay! So I did it all again. Prime, base coat, colour 1, colour 2, gloss varnish, transfer, and then I did it again. Fucking shit. I'm not painting this for a third time, so it's going into a biostrip bath. And then I'm just going to crack on painting a black marine for the first time. Never done black marine, paranoid about making mistakes. So spoilers, I think I underdid it. Bit too subtle perhaps, but I didn't completely balls it up. Essentially, when black undercoat, a lighter black, and then a grey, and just trying to build it up exactly the same as I did with my Deathwing, but just with black. So once I built up to that grey, covered up bits of overspray by going in again with black into the shadows. Thanks, Henry. I think black's one of those colours that people say is really hard to paint, and I never really understood why, but I think I kind of get it a bit more now, because if you sprayed it too light, then it looks like you're going to have a grey marine. I sprayed it not enough, and it just looks all black still, maybe. So yeah, just a tricky one to find that right balance. It still looks black though, so I'm happy enough. Shield's really fun. Nice red blend, light to dark. Rest of the details went on fine, and I had fun trying to do the purity seals and not recording it. So it's time to paint the same shoulder pad for the third time in a row. Love it. We're done. My first army is complete for now. It's been a really fun experience. I've learned a lot and hopefully retained a few skills in the meantime. Airbrush wise, I think I've covered the vast majority of my thoughts already, but those generally are that the Evo allows you to make more mistakes by assuming you know what you're doing. I've seen people do incredible things with airbrushes, and I'm sure this one does amazing things. I'm just not gonna do amazing things with it yet. Going up a brush has definitely helped me realize I'm still very much in the hand-holding phase of my airbrushing. I like the grip on the trigger. It feels awesome. It's way more ergonomic and just generally a bit of a nicer experience to use. That is better than the Ultra. I can see why this came recommended from everybody. I feel like it's okay to admit you're not amazing at something. The Evo is beyond me. It might not be in the future, but it certainly is now. I don't doubt its design, its pedigree, all the people that recommended it to me, I'm sure aren't lying. I'm just not in a position where I can put that to the best use. If on a model, I think Belial sums my thoughts up on the Evolution the best. I was too scared to use it, where it could have made one of the biggest differences, like on the cloak or something like that. So if I'm not going to use it, what's the point? Yeah, I've had fun, I've messed about, I've made some mistakes. I'm sure I will get better over time, and the more practice I put in, that's generally how this thing works. But I thoroughly enjoyed everything that I've done, but if I had to pick between the two, I'm going Ultra every time. I think it's awesome. I can wholeheartedly say that I think it's the best beginner airbrush you can buy, full stop. It's It's not the cheapest, but it is the best. I've got a cool army now, so that's pretty awesome. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you to all our patrons for your continued support. It means that we can do this. Without you, we would not be able to. So, very generous for everything that you give us. See you in the next one.